This is Movies, a podcast about the act of cinema. And with me today, he's in $10,000 of debt from buying heroin off of me. It is Hans. Hans, how are you doing? That's how you got so skinny. You're muted.
Right, you muted me. That was you.
I
That was
didn't
not
mute
me.
you. I didn't mute you at
No.
all. That was you. You're getting your
Ima
your memory's getting really bad in your old age.
Getting really bad. It's always been horrendous. I can't imagine what my life would be if I was $10,000 in the hole. Like I think I would just why even try anything? I'm never gonna make that in my job at my jobs. I'm just fuck it.
Can you file for bankruptcy?
I don't how does that even work?
That's a no then. Anyway, we got back on the show with us, Ryan Jackson. How are you doing tonight, Ryan?
I'm good. How are you? It's nice to be back on movies, talking about selling drugs and being in debt.
Well, the Pusher films are near and dear to my heart, and we haven't covered them in over 400 episodes of the show. I think it was long overdue. And then I saw that Nicholas Winding Refn decided to put out a box set of his Pusher trilogy in 4K, which I think you can only get it right now from buynwr.com. So I was like, cool, I'll buy the box set and we'll do a show on it. I bought the box set. It was $140. I did get the autograph. It was an extra 15 bucks. I was like, all right, if I'm already spending $100 on this fucking thing, I might as well get his signature. And it didn't arrive in time. So I wound up having to go back and watch Pusher again on archive.org because Amazon was just loaded with advertisements and I couldn't palate it. So unfortunately, my viewing of Pusher 1 is about the same quality as it's always been. But I'm very excited to get this box set finally, which has the two sequel films and Gambler, and then a couple of movies that are inspired by Pusher, and give those a look whenever it happens to show up in my mailbox. But Ryan, what is your history with the Pusher movies?
They're definitely not the first Refn movies I saw, but I want to say, if I'm remembering this correctly, I want to say they were the first Refn films after I kind of saw. It might have been the. It's hard to say. I feel like I saw them after I kind of saw maybe Bronson.
Mhm.
I think I watched Bronson, and then I was like, oh, that made me sort of pay attention to Refn, because I know he had done that movie. Was it Fear X, right?
Yeah, Fear X with John Turturro. I think it
Which
was a
was like,
Canadian production.
yeah, which was like the most unreffin film he's ever did. So like I was aware of him from the Fear X thing, but like when you see Fear X, you don't really think much of like this is like you don't get the sense that like this is like an auteur or like
For me, I think it's him aping David Lynch hardest, and it just
mm,
comes across as a bad imitation. It
right.
doesn't really feel like his old style, Refn's old style, or his new style at all. He's just getting that out of his system.
Right. And so when I saw Bronson, it made me like it made it made me like want to all right, okay, let me go watch some more of this guy's stuff. And then that's when believe I first was like, oh, Pusher. And when I saw Pusher, I kind of was just like, I was not expecting Pusher
Hmm.
when I saw it. Like I remember being like, now I had different movies to draw from at that point, right? And like I was just like, okay, like who is this guy? Like I thought of him one way when I saw Fear X, then I thought of him another way when I saw Bronson, then I thought of him another way when I saw Pusher, and it wasn't until I started to like really do a dive into like Refn that I kind of got the bigger picture of like Refn as a filmmaker, and then at that once I had kind of like caught up to where he was, then I was like I pretty much saw everything that when they came out.
Yeah, Bronson was my first exposure to Nicholas Winding Refn as well. I remember, I think maybe it was Ebert and Roper or whoever was doing that show at the time. I feel like they reviewed that movie and seeing Tom Hardy all dressed up as specifically when he's doing the one man show cutaways in the film, I thought was visually interesting. And so I investigated that movie, and then I really dove into Refn, of course, when Drive came out. I got my hands on a work print of the movie before it was released widespread. And I remember that the work print of the movie didn't leave much of an impression on me, specifically because it was all temp sound. And the score had not been done yet by Cliff Martinez, and they had the 28 Days Later soundtrack over the movie instead. And that was my first exposure to it. I was like, all right, well, that's not what I was expecting from this movie. I thought we were going to be essentially what the big takeaway for a lot of people was I thought this was going to be an action film. This is not an action film. And with that music, I thought, okay, interesting, I guess. And then I eventually revisited it. But sometime around then of watching Drive, I saw a YouTube ad for the Pusher movies that described it as Europe's The Sopranos. And I was like, okay, all right, I guess I'll take a look at this. And then I watched the first movie, and it was it captured me in a way where I was like, damn, this is awesome. This is excellent. This is very intense. And I feel like it's doable. It's something that's so small scale that somebody could actually do this.
Right.
And that movie wound up pushing me into wanting to direct and not just write. And so I have to credit Pusher for launching everything with
Pusher for pushing
this. Yes,
you.
for pushing me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because having returned to these movies and knowing like that I saw them, I don't know how many times I've seen these movies. I mean, I know I've seen them each more than once. And returning to them this time, it was funny how like I forgot so much of each movie and like how I knew that like I knew who was gonna live, but I still thought that they were gonna die.
Mm.
Like regardless of like how you like with Pusher One, Pusher Two, Pusher Three, I still remembered like how the movies ended, and like I still felt like that wasn't the way it was going to end, which kind of I think speaks to how effective these movies are in terms of like the anxiety and the anxiousness that they sort of that shit that like people like to say the Safties are really good at. Like Refn is clearly good at it because this Pusher trilogy kind of shows you like yeah, like I feel like I'm in debt. Well, I mean, and I am in debt. I'm a, you know, but I feel like I'm in debt. I feel like I take on the debt as the viewer watching these movies of the fucking people who owe.
And the cast, I obviously it's mainly his friends. He was
Mhm.
friends with Mads. I believe he was friends with Kim Bodina at the time. But it's so well cast. Everybody here feels very authentic, especially to the
Yeah.
time. It's kind of a shame that I think he had a falling out with Kim Bodina after Bleeder, and he's so good in this movie, and actually in Bleeder as well.
Yeah.
It's a shame that we didn't really get to see his character develop more in the subsequent Pusher films at all. I did see on Letterboxd you went and you watched the full trilogy, and Hans, you watched the first one and then you started watching. So, fun fact here, I recommended Pusher to Jake Hanrahan of Popular Front a couple years back, and he started watching the movie and said to me, bro, what the fuck is this? Is so cheesy. This sucks. Why would you recommend this? I was like, what are you talking about? He watched the 2012 English remake of Pusher.
Yeah.
Idiot. And Hans, you started watching. You started watching that
Yeah.
Pusher.
Well, I wanted to see what the difference between the two of them is, and I made it 10 minutes in, and I was telling you, like, it felt like a Saturday Night Live digital short version of Pusher. Even the look of it, and just how every performance was such a cartoon, but because I feel like these Pusher movies have very extreme characters that at some point you can easily be like, okay, that's maybe going a little over the top, but they're all kind of rooted in reality. Like you believe that these characters are insane or whatever they are. In this 2012 Pusher, it just feels like someone's just doing a sketch. It's just like, oi, mate. Oh, this is me voice. And I'm literally like that. Like they sound even like someone doing a bad British accent. And the look of it, it looks cheap and cheesy and just, I made it 10 minutes and I was like, I'm not gonna
Well, you know what
waste
happened
two
was
hours.
Drive came out. Drive was a big hit, and so they were like, "All right, well, let's license something from Refn and make it try to look like Drive. Let's add a hell of a lot of neon and make it slick and fast-paced editing." And it's bad. The only thing that's good about it is they cast Zlatko Buric. I
Yep.
probably butchered his name. They cast Milo from this movie as the same
Frank,
character. Yes, he's
Frank. Every time I see that dude, bro, Frank. He's like one of my favorite parts of the whole trilogy. Is that he's fucking great. Like that's
he's
I
so
don't know
good.
where he found him, but you believe like he is that guy. Like he also doesn't like he looks like the type of guy who cooks and never washes his hands,
Mm.
which is why people get sick when they eat his fucking food. It's like, why would you eat this guy's food? Like
Yeah.
why would you let this guy fucking? But yeah, he's fucking great. I don't know.
It,
Go ahead, Hans.
I don't know how involved Refn was in this remake, but it just I think it's the same thing that I always complain about when it comes to remakes, that it feels like the people that are involved don't understand what works about the original, and then they end up doing something that doesn't feel like the original at all. So then it's just like you're just using the name for name recognition, but it feels nothing like that because I pulled it up just to have as we're talking about it, and even the visual style of it, it just
Do you want to
looks
share
like
some of it?
sure, it just looks like generic action movie. Uh, and if you compare it to how stylish and how claustrophobic and how an artist made the original ones, this just literally feels like any movie. Like anyone could have directed this. The look of it, the colors that they use, the angles, it looks like whatever movie made by whoever. And Pusher is so full of style and personality with every shot that I just don't understand why even put the same name on the movie if you're not even going to try to replicate what that other one is.
Money. They just wanted money. And then Refn
Uh,
put his name as EP on the film, presumably just because of that, I would assume. Is it okay, it's gonna be easy to sell this movie.
there
Oh
he
man.
is.
Yeah, there he is. You know,
See,
for
but even
some
the
reason,
you know what it looks like those Russian movies that Eric Roberts makes 10 out every month, where it's just the cinematography is the most generic shit. The same look that all of those movies have. Even the sets look kind of cheap, and
The
it's just like I just fucking it's
the
just gross.
actor, the actor who's supposed to be Frank in this British remake, he looks like that white Jamaican singer that's meme that everyone's always memeing. You know what
Oh
I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah, 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 yeah.
about?
This guy.
He was talking with Milo at the table. Him, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Not that guy. That guy looks like fucking him, but that guy looks like what's
That's
what's
the
what
main guy, right? This guy.
this
him?
guy's
Yeah,
the main
yeah.
Yeah,
guy.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I have no idea what his name is. Is that the
I
fake
don't either.
Jamaican blonde guy?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
Mm.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just again another, you take art and then you just put out
Have you
shit.
guys seen the
Oh
Indian
yeah.
Pusher?
I was telling Hans, I said, the superior remake is actually the Indian Pusher movie. I watched them both, I think, back to back after going back to the first Pusher movie, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. And the Indian Pusher film is interesting where it winds up going. And of course, like very Indian, feels very Bollywood. It's been a while since I've watched it, but what I remember is it hits all the same notes and then God intervenes and the guy gets revenge on all the villains in the movie. Have you watched it recently, Ryan?
No, not recently. I like it's one of those again where just like Pusher, the original Pusher, like having seen it, I know like I remember the vibe. Like I don't remember the scenes. Like even watching the first Pusher, the original Refn Pusher, like I was like I remember all of this, but yet if I could not verbatim like tell you what was going to happen other than like oh yeah that does happen every time I saw it. Like did you guys retain any of the movie? Because I felt like this movie for for a fairly straightforward movie, it's interesting how much of it I retain. and how much
Hmm.
of it I didn't, which is like I really don't remember plot points, even though it's not really a plot movie like that. Like I just really say, oh yeah, that did happen. Oh yeah, like I forgot Mads Mikkelsen. Like I forgot his character like betrays Frank and then he beats him with a bat. I forgot about that, which is an obvious thing because he comes back in the second with the scar on his head from being, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff. I had like, I don't know what it is about these movies, but like they're maybe it's just because they're such a vibe and they work on such a like they're kinetic as hell, like, and they just move. Like you're just, it's almost like you're experiencing a ride each
Hmm.
one, right? And you get to the end of the ride and you're like, wow, that was a ride. But you don't really think about the ride. You know what I mean? Like it's like you're taking an Uber somewhere. You don't really think about all the things you pass when you're in the Uber. You're just like, I jumped in an Uber, I got to the place I needed to get to. And I'm not saying that as necessarily a negative thing about the movie. If anything, it's kind of weirdly a positive.
No, I completely agree. I think keeping it simple, all you really need to know is
Mhm.
it gets worse. It's going to get worse. It's only just going to get worse. There's not going to be any crazy twists or plot points that you wouldn't expect. It's just going to get worse for the protagonist, and they're going to have to do something to get out of it. And the answer for the first two is leave. You just got to
You
leave.
just got to leave.
Just
Yeah.
just
Right.
exit. But no, I think the first Pusher movie especially, there are scenes in the film and just like flickers of interesting filmmaking that I think stick with you. But on the whole, I would say you're right. I think the second movie, less so, just
Oh
because
my
you do
gosh.
have. What's up, Hans? What do we got?
I I found the Indian ending, and God is just an Indian man with a white robe.
Yeah. What else would he be? Of course he is. What are you talking about? That's not what you picture.
Oh God. Hold up, hold up.
Let's take a look at this.
It's on Daily Motion on 6 parts. The quality's not great,
That's
but
probably how I watched it too back in 2012 or 20. Yeah. Here we go. So this is Pusher 2011. There's God.
wait, wait. I mean, I don't know if there's any point of having sound because it's not gonna
I
say
mean,
anything
why
for us,
not? It's better than silence to hear some Indian voices.
but I disagree.
So, for those who are only listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we have the protagonist, R. Frank, sitting in a hallway talking to God, who is a 50 to 70-year-old Indian man in a white robe and flip flops.
Just the actor's dad. Just someone's dad. Hey, can you act and say nothing? You just stand there. Okay. Nope. All right, let me fast forward. He's literally just standing there.
Hmm.
Doesn't do anything. He just stands there.
It was a very bad lieutenant. Oh, okay. It's that kind of
Listen,
movie.
for an Indian movie, there's not as much poop as I thought there would be, but uh
There's not a lot of public shitting.
oh shit, here we
Mm.
go. Oh fuck. Wait, what did God do? That's what I want to see. What did he does he just kisses God's feet and then he gets powers? Wait, God turns into his mom? Is that what happened?
That's right. And then from there, he extracts revenge. They essentially do the same, not to
Oh
spoil
shit.
See No Evil or Speak No Evil. The American remake of that does the same thing, but less religious, less spiritual.
But like does he get any type of Hadouken or like any type of like you know what I mean? Like what was the point of
Does he get a
super
Hadouken? Does he get
strength?
Street
Does
Fighter special
yeah,
moves?
does he get anything or what? Like what's the difference between getting a pep talk from his mom and oh shit. Wait, hold on. What happened? Oh,
Shot his fingers off.
I love the Rikio practical effects.
Ooh.
I don't even know what's going on. I
The
don't think the
sound is
sounds are
not aligned
matching.
with the visual, and it's
Yeah.
not helping it at all. It's making it look way more amateur.
Oh man. How does it end? How does it actually end?
He's redeemed. He becomes
The
a good
rest is
man. I'm pretty sure she doesn't run away with the money. They probably just live happily ever after.
Holy shit, this is the first shot where it actually looks like Pusher. Where'd it go? Hold on, where he's driving. There. There you go. That's the only part that feels like Pusher that we've seen so far.
I
Okay.
mean, no, honestly, the first like hour and a half, I think is a 2 hour. All these Indians, they don't know how to time their movies, which I
No.
almost appreciate it, but it gets very grating quickly, and it keeps me away from watching many of them. But the
I
first
know.
hour and a half of the movie follows basically all the same beats as Pusher, and then they
It's
deviate.
it's always an exaggeration with them, you know? It's like 72 virgins, and it's like, really? How much do you say that you paid for your Refn box set? Because I'm looking at it right now and it says $100.
It's $100, and then there's shipping and handling and tariffs.
Oh,
So I paid
130.
a 145.
Okay. Yikes. Okay. Yeah, I just saw that it ships from Denmark. That's so
Mm-hmm.
fucking inconvenient.
Yeah, it's very inconvenient. It's
Yeah.
gonna
I
look
see
nice on my shelf, though.
if you go to his what is it buynwr.com,
Yeah,
he
that's what I meant.
has the 4K versions of each Pusher movie to stream,
Hmm.
but you can't stream them in America, so you need to
I
use a
yeah,
VPN.
I
Yeah.
tried that workaround. Hans,
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
want this?
And I'm just looking at it.
Is this what you're gonna yield of your pump.fun profits? Extra small? You didn't lose that much weight.
No. What else? This got cool shit here. Um,
This
Merry
t-shirt's a
Christmas,
little
Mr.
cheap. $45
Yeah.
for that. Come
Yeah.
on.
What is this?
A vinyl? A vinyl
R
record for Merry
r
Christmas,
r
Mr. Lawrence?
Oh, it's a
Read
Oshima. Oh,
Reach.
that's for the Oshima movie, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Oh shit. You know what? That's not worth $100, but I do want it.
Yeah,
I'm not,
the
I'm
sound
not gonna lie.
actually I have the original of that from the 1980s. The soundtrack is better than the movie.
There's the
And then
box
we've
set
got,
that you paid for right there, the hundred
yeah, that's
dollar.
what I did. Yeah. I can't wait. I can't wait to dig into it.
I,
You know
I
what's
did.
interesting about Pusher? Pusher's got this whole universe around it and so many semi sequels and kind of other avenues for the film to continue on. You have the Pusher trilogy, you've got the international remakes, and you also have Gambler. Did either of you guys check out Gambler by any chance? Obviously, it
No.
No.
wasn't required reading for this episode, but I think it's interesting. It's the better of the two Nicholas Winding Refn documentaries, in my opinion, and both of them
Oh
are
wait a minute.
fine.
Is Gambler the documentary his wife shot when he was writing the Pusher 2 and 3?
I don't think his wife shot it. She did My Life, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, which was around the
Right.
time of Only God
Right.
Forgives.
And I've seen that, but I did see. I think Gambler, is it like with the? I forget where I saw it. Was it part of one of the Pusher special features?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like shows him stressing out, and he's like right. He basically talking about writing both Pusher 2 and 3, like, and his wife, he's talking about how he needs the money, and he's stressing out. It's ironically mirroring like the characters in Pusher.
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember that. I did see Gambler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been a long time since, but I remember that. I actually remember that more vividly than the movies. Weirdly, because I feel like that was the first time I kind of like put a face to the name Refn,
Mm.
and also made the connection that his wife an actress in his movie. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, that's, and that was like the first time I made that connection, was watching that Gambler, uh, I guess mini doc, if you want to call it that. Hans, have you seen Gambler?
Nope.
No.
No,
Okay.
no.
It's very solid.
I'm very surface level when it comes to Refn, I think.
I mean, he's
Like I've
very
seen
surface level, but yeah.
fair. Like I've seen most of his movies, but never really dived further than that.
I don't know if there's much beneath that, but
He kind of he
You
kind
know,
of
there's
he kind of
also
bothers
a
me. So.
an original short film, Pusher, that Refn himself starred in as Frank, that is somewhere out there. I have never found it. I've never watched it, but I've seen clips of it where he's like in a leather jacket and he's walking down an alley and holding a gun. It's very Ralph Seppi Jr. I would love to get my
uh,
hands on a copy of it at some point. And Hans, what are you looking at YouTube right now? If
I'm
there's
looking for it. Yeah.
just an image of it, you'll get the vibe completely.
Yeah, picturing Refn playing any kind of part that's not like the most like limp wristed kind of
The
soy.
weirdo and android fucking inhuman
Like I don't think
reptilian.
I don't think he has that range. I don't see him being able to pull it off. It's kind of funny though, because I know that making the Pusher films, he and I guess in Copenhagen Cowboy this applies too. That like Refn was very particular about the people that he casted, and he made sure that they were like authentic enough, right? Like there was some
Hmm.
real, and it's like to think about this guy directing those kinds of people, it's kind of funny, like you know what I mean? Because he is definitely like the most, like I don't know, like even watching him on this set of what is it, Only God Forgives, just the way Refn kind of just it's just you do not expect this guy to be sort of like
This guy.
the guy directing the kinds of movies he's making, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like, because he doesn't seem like he would command any sort of like authority on a set at all whatsoever. Like, you know what I mean?
What do we got here, Hans? What is
Clerks.
this? Oh, there you go.
There he is.
He actually does. He looks like Randall from Clerks. Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Okay. Right. Okay. Okay.
Damn.
Right. Refn is like upping the blower. Okay. Okay, Refn, I see you. Okay.
That was more violent than any of the three Pusher movies combined.
Yeah.
It's amazing he has a wife.
It's amazing he has a chin. Like his chin is almost his chin and his throat are like almost exactly the same. Like it's just like, what the fuck? I like Refn though. I do think he's an interesting filmmaker. He's definitely one of those like stylists. In a way where it's just like I know he's going to be very fixated on sort of the aesthetics of a movie.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the reason that I like Refn. And it's weird because there's a lot of filmmakers who I guess I would say are like that, but I don't like them. But he's one
he,
of those exceptions for me, at least.
he made m- movies for kids.
No,
Are you aware of this? The
I don't.
Famous Five?
The
A
famous.
series of feature-length films for children, loosely based on the classic stories and characters created by Enid Blyton. The first of these films was
Refn
transmitted in
did.
late 2023. Yeah.
Huh.
It's a film called The Famous. It's the last thing he's done. Here it is. Uh, with the BBC apparently.
I said creator.
We're
Yeah.
gonna get away with this.
Let's find out.
Oh, this is a BBC series. No wonder it doesn't. We don't know about it.
Yeah, but it's
I've never heard. I'm one of the biggest Nicholas Winding Refn fans.
Yeah, I haven't
Or
either.
I
This
thought
is
I was.
this is
I've
new.
never heard of this.
Yeah, I've never heard of this either.
Underestimate children.
I must admit, they do
And Refn doesn't promote this, so this is definitely a paycheck job for him.
yeah.
Mhm.
It doesn't look very Refn either. It looks very
No, I mean, if you look at his filmography, he has like a Miss Marple episode he directed too. So he's not above doing television to get. I mean, he hasn't done a proper movie since The Neon Demon, which is almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, he's been saying he's gonna do that what's the name of that movie? I forget the name of it now. Uh
There was The Avenging Silence, which
that's
was
it.
going to be.
The Avenging Silence was the film that he continually brought up over the years. Like I'm gonna eventually do the Avenging Silence, and I heard that it was supposed to be like a Japanese co-production or something. Um,
Mhm.
and who knows if that's what he's working on or if that's the next Refn official Refn thing. But that BBC show, I've never. I mean, it says created by Nicholas Winding Refn, so who knows? Like, is he a showrunner? I doubt it. Is he like? Is this the same level of like Refn's involvement as only God for what? Not only God forgives. Not only God forgives.
Uh,
What's the Copenhagen Cowboy or the Amazon
Too Old to Die Young.
Too Old to Die Young.
it says here that he's the creator and executive producer. Um,
Like the Pusher
he did it.
remake that you watched.
Yeah, but he
So,
didn't
yeah, so
write.
this is like he's just this name
Yeah,
only kind of thing.
So he probably had an idea and he
Yeah.
sold it and made a little bit of money, and then
well,
his name's on it as EP.
I think the idea is that it's using a Danish writer's stories,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That looks like a Danish Enid. Oh no, that's a
He
British writer. Okay, never mind.
he was supposed to do Maniac Cop for a
Yeah,
long time until and then that he finally abandoned that and that was with
yeah. I think this is just name only. Like he just signed his name because he doesn't even. It says here that the three different directors that also wrote the three different films, so he didn't even have anything to do with writing any of them.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So just a paycheck, I
Yeah.
guess.
We'll circle back to that once we get through the rest of Refn's movies. So let me ask you guys a question as it relates to Pusher. This is something that I caught this time around, or at least I assumed this time around. I'm not so certain I did in the past. Do we think that now, when it comes to Mads Mikkelsen's character, the name is it's supposed to be Tony, right? But
Tony,
it's
right? But it's
it's
T
it's
O
spelled
N N
Tawny.
Y. Yeah,
Yeah,
Tawny. Yeah,
double
Tony.
N's. Yeah. Do we think that he faked spraining his ankle? Do you think he was a rat as early as that when it came to
Yeah,
having to? Yeah, you think so too?
yeah, yeah. Because he's like, I gotta go, man. My ankle, and then and then next thing he
Yeah.
knows, when he's at the cops and they drop his name, it's like, oh, like he's totally sold him out. Like
Mhm.
he totally deserved to be bludgeoned with a baseball bat for sure. uh,
Another
There's
character
some.
that I also really enjoyed on this go around specifically was the chef slash enforcer. What was his name? Radovan.
Radovan, that guy is got. He's definitely like one of those street casted people because you look at that dude and you're like, yeah, I believe he's like a guy who's in the streets as muscle, like one of
Hmm.
those fucking like, yeah, he's just a big fucking violent dude. Like he's really and he shows up in Pusher 3 too.
Yeah, it comes back around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I believe the entire cast is all Refn's friends,
Mhm.
except Kim Bodina might have been the only actor at the time with experience. Because I feel like I remember seeing something about Refn firing the original guy and swapping him out with Kim Bodina, and then everybody else was basically buddies with him. Mads probably being one of the earliest ones. So I think it's also interesting how overlooked Bleeder is as a companion
Yeah,
piece to this movie because they
yeah.
borrow the same exact cast, except also Refn throws his future wife into the movie as well. And I think that might have been how he met her. And the tone of that movie is so radically different from this movie, even though it feels like it has the same energy. It feels like it has like the same spine, maybe. But they're really such different movies.
They're very
I
they go ahead, Tom.
no,
Go
go
ahead.
on.
I was just gonna
Well,
say,
I
like you're
go on, go on,
I
go
was
on.
no, I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, they when you watch Bleeder, it does feel like it's part of like it's like the unofficial fourth, like part of but it's like so different. You know what I mean in terms of just the overall story. Like it's not on the same like it doesn't have the same pace as one of the Pusher films. But you're right about that, Jay. Like it does. You can tell like oh this was made in kind of like probably in tandem like
Mhm.
with the first Pusher movie. Obviously the actors the big thing that crosses over, but I don't know, there's something about like Bleeder and Pusher specifically even more so than like Pusher 2 and 3, which definitely feel like a progression, like not like a giant progression from the first Pusher, but like they definitely feel like oh he's in a different mode and he's going for a little bit more, right? But Pusher and Bleeder feel like early Refn um hasn't established himself yet, and they're very like their style there, right? There's definitely you can't say these movies don't have a style to them because they clearly do, but they're very stripped down in a way that like at a certain point, maybe past Pusher 3, Refn never is ever this stripped down again. Like, like nothing he's going to do is going to be this stripped down and this sort of like lean and mean. Um, and it kind of makes me wish that he would return to that. I really, not that I don't like the where Refn has like the hyper stylized, not really concerned with reality. Like Refn, like I like that. I definitely dig that. I think me, you like, obviously a long time ago, I had you on MAS and we talked about Copenhagen Cowboy, and obviously I liked Copenhagen Cowboy, and Copenhagen Cowboy is very different. Like, it's
The
similar
way
in
that
some
I
ways.
the way that I
It's
used to
similar in
put
ways.
it was
Mhm.
Refn is like the closest thing to a transgender filmmaker with his style, in that he starts off like very gritty, very masculine,
Yeah.
very hardcore, and then flourishes into like very pretty visuals, very delicate. And, he's constantly, all of his films in the last couple of years specifically have been, paychecks from these perfume brands, or Saint Laurent or whoever. And he'll just go and shoot his wife or his daughters in old houses with, and that's kind of it. It's like pieces of
Yes.
Copenhagen Cowboy essentially, which he brought back, the actor who played Radovan in that. And didn't he also bring back Zoltik Burek, who plays
Yeah,
Milo?
Milo. Yeah, yeah, he's back. He's in Copenhagen Cowboy too. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Okay. So I don't know. I would love for him to go back and do there were plans for a fourth Pusher. I don't know if
Mhm.
you heard about this.
Yeah, Pusher
There's
Four.
a there's a character in Pusher 3 who's, I think he's a Pakistani drug dealer, who was going to be the central character of Pusher 4, and then he got
Ooh.
arrested.
Muhammad,
But
like, Muhammad. I think that's the
I
kid.
mean,
Muhammad.
Mm.
that's a safe bet, I think.
I
I think,
I think like that. I wonder if that kid's dead. By the way, that's weird. Having recently watched all three of them, like there's a moment where they're torturing that character Muhammad, right? The Pakistani drug dealer.
It's been a while since I've seen Pusher 3. That's honestly the one I go back to the least,
Yeah.
which is, and
So
it's not bad or anything. It's just, I don't know. It's not as
yeah,
fun.
it's definitely not as strong as the first two for sure. But it's still good. But it's the bar for the first two are a lot. It doesn't quite meet it. But
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. But I did notice like they put him in a fucking freezer and then he just never comes back. So I don't know if dude is. I guess I don't know if Refn has a plan of like coming back and saying, "Oh, he got out of the freezer" or whatever. But like they locked him in a fucking freezer and we never see him again. That's interesting though. That's
That might have
interesting.
been decided. Actually, man, I might have this wrong. I feel like he got arrested during the production of Pusher 3, and that's
Mhm.
why his character probably has that fate, and why they didn't do Pusher 4 back in the
Mm.
day. So that could be the. I feel like that was it. I feel like that came up in Gambler, or I saw that in some documentary somewhere. Maybe I'm imagining
No,
things,
that would make sense.
but
That would
yeah.
definitely make. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Mhm.
Uh,
Um,
to
yeah.
Yeah, to go back to that point that you made about how he's like the tranny director or whatever. I feel like his career is very like Gaspar Noé too. I don't know if you've ever seen I Stand Alone.
Yeah,
I believe that's his first movie. That movie has a very dirty European feel to it, kind of like
yeah.
what Pusher and Bleeder have. And then as his
Scumbag core.
career, yeah, and as his career evolves, I guess he starts getting more experimental and more artistic and more,
Mhm.
to put it one way, artistic. And they both
Yo,
started in like a
clip
very
Hans doing those hand motions. By the way.
they both started in like a very similar, I think, point. Just very realistic, gross European films about characters with big stakes but small. I guess big and small stakes at the same time. If you think of I Stand Alone, but I think that's why it's always interesting to see what they do. Even though Gaspar Noé's latest movies, I feel like he's going to what's this Harmony Korine for me, where it's just like, okay, you're just being fucking
Which
weird
one?
for no
Which one feels
reason.
like Harmony Korine?
the vortex and lux eterna, or however the fuck you say that.
Lux Aeterna, you're
Sure,
gonna have to,
yeah.
yeah, however you
Uh,
say it, that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
symbol.
yeah. Because it's just like, okay, so you're just all right. So we're just doing art now. It's artistic. I get it, but I don't know. It's just maybe a little too much to the edge of surrealism or whatever you want to call them, experimental, where I'm kind of like, can we like turn it back into like maybe a bit of that rough realism
I
that
feel
you
like
had at the
those are
beginning of
his
your
least
career?
experimental movies. You think Vortex and Lux Eterna? I mean, compared to Enter the Void and
Enter the Void.
Irreversible, I think
Mhm.
they're the most grounded. I mean, honestly, I like Gaspar Noé's recent output more than anything he did earlier on. I'd say, what was the one that A24 put out that takes place in one night and it's just a
Climax?
climax? Yeah,
Oh yeah,
climax
Yeah.
sent me for a trip. I really enjoyed
yeah.
that movie as well.
That was crazy. Yeah, yeah. That's we're talking. Yeah, 2018. I mean, I guess that's one of the last ones. You got
I don't
love.
I have a complex relationship with Gaspar's work. Like on some level, I still appreciate it, but on a whole other level, I'm kind of like, yeah, but this is like kind of dumb, and like you're kind of dumb, and but like you have a level of capability as a filmmaker that you can kind of see it. Like you kind of see it. You're like, yeah, like even Irreversible. Like I feel like Irreversible is an interesting film. And I feel like it's his best movie, and it's not even close. Like I feel like it's not even close. Like none of the stuff he's ever did has even come close to Irreversible again. But there's things about all of his films that I kind of like, even though I have like a lot of criticisms for it for Gaspar. There's stuff about every film that I'm like, yeah, I like how he did that, or I like sort of some of the sensibilities and the choices that he makes. Even if like overall, I feel like the movies are kind of like, yeah, like I don't know. Like I feel like he's trying to. I feel like he's very similar to Refn, but like his aspirations are to be more heady than Refn, but they're not. But I think he thinks they are, but they're not. And that's what kind of gets me like, where I'm like, he's not really like you're not that guy. Like you're not that guy, Gaspar. Like, and I fuck with you on some level, but you're not that guy. Like you're the type of filmmaker that like if you just embraced like, okay, I don't make those kind of movies, cool. I think his films would be better for that. I think he should just lean into like I'm the style over substance guy. And if some substance comes through me doing that, that's cool. But I don't think he's ever going to get the substance going for it.
Yeah, he's somebody who's very hot and cold for me. I know
Mm-hmm.
the what did he do? Even Enter the Void, I was not
Mm-hmm.
particularly a fan of, even though that was viewed as such like a visionary movie at the time. That and the other film was Love, which
Yeah,
was
love,
Yeah,
which was like porn, basically.
yeah, it
yeah,
was
Yeah.
during that. It came around that time of like Nymphomaniac, where it was like, oh,
Mm.
the unsimulated sex on film
yeah.
art
Oh my God,
movie.
penis. Oh, I'm like penis again. Oh,
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
penis. Yeah, it's just like, oh, he's gonna fuck again. Cool. I guess for the 20th time.
Hans, is that
No,
an abnormally large mug that you're
yes.
holding, or is this a camera
Holy
trick?
shit.
No, it is. Yeah, I use this to boil water in, but I just put some ice and
I
carbonated
was like,
water
is
and
that
melted
mug
water.
bigger than his head? And it is bigger than your head.
Yeah.
That's
That is
amazing.
really legitimately a giant mug. That's not.
I'm doing the experimental thing here. You don't know if I'm doing camera tricks or not. Is it too close to
Yeah.
ooh, is it actually that big?
Hype
Oh, is it
Williams
bigger
shit.
than this Pepsi can? Look at this shit. Oh my God.
Wow. Hans, this wasn't your first time watching the Pusher movies, was it?
No, no, no. I think I think we meant to do a Pusher episode a while ago or something related to early Refn, and we just never did. Uh, and that might have been the first time, but that was a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it's probably my favorite Refn movie, if I'm honest, Pusher, because I feel like it's the most straightforward, the best acted, I want to say, even though I don't understand what the fuck they're saying. Like I believe everything they say.
Mm.
And there's something about the grit that this movie has where I don't think he's been able to replicate in anything else. I'm not sure if he's tried, but there's a feel that this movie has that I think is very very difficult to replicate. Where it's early 80s, early 90s European small stakes filmmaking that I really enjoy, and it's probably why this is my favorite reference because it feels like so performance driven, but at the same time it's so stylistic and so every frame has something interesting to look at, or it's framed in an interesting way where you're never bored.
Mhm.
uh, and I think as his career progresses, yeah, there's a lot of more style that comes into it, but as much as I like Matt Mikkelsen on pretty much everything he's done, I think, or that I've seen at least, I think his performance here is maybe the best in his career, and that goes along with
Really?
how much I like.
Oh,
I
That's a
mean,
little
Pusher 2,
crazy.
Pusher 2, you is the Mads
that
performance.
okay,
Yeah.
Pusher 2 is it's Mads movie, but like it is
yeah.
really like that's
I
for
mean,
me for me this is like Pusher 2 is like top Refn. I don't know if it's my favorite. I'm still kind of like, for me, Valhalla Rising is really good and like really underrated. Like every time I
That is
return
the
to
one I can't penetrate it for the life of me.
that's the
I've
one
tried many times.
yeah, that's the one that like at a certain point when I first watched it, I was like, what the fuck? And then
yeah.
every time I've come back to it, it's gotten better. Like, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, so like for me, Valhalla Rising holds that like sort of top spot still. I don't think and I would say Pusher 2 and is right next to it or right under it. And then maybe Drive, maybe. I don't know. Drive is one of those weird ones because like it's interesting, Jay, that you were talking about. You saw like a work print with like it had like temporary music on it.
Mm.
Like that, that's interesting because like that movie to me is not the same movie without that music.
No, it's absolutely not. My impression
That
of it
music is
watching that
yeah.
cut versus the actual released version is night and day. I completely understand why it became a phenomenon because of the score and the only thing that actually was still in it was the Real Human Being song. That was it. Everything else was completely different. The sound, probably even the sound effects were very separate of what got released theatrically.
Yeah, that movie is like all like without the music, that's like it's like missing a character or something. It's a very interesting. That's when I kind of knew that Refn was like operating on a different level. Was that movie because you're right. Like the expectation is like it's this James Salas hard boiled crime novel, and what he turns it into is like completely not that, not at all. Like it has some of that because it's baked into the script and it's part of the DNA of the source material. It has some of that in it, but it's totally you can tell like this Refn is not at all concerned with that. Like that's
Mhm.
not what he really just wants to have a guy driving around LA listening to pop music and shit. And like you can tell like his interest is like very European and very outsider. Because if an American would have made Drive, it would have been like some shit that like Vin Diesel would be in, or like
Well, I
like
think the original plan it was going to be Hugh Grant starring in Drive, and I think it was James Mangold who was going to
oh,
direct it because it was in development hell for about 15 years, and then Ryan Gosling got thrown in, and he had final say to approve of the director, and he picked Refn, and that's how the movie became what it was. So it would have just been like some generic
Yeah.
Rock'em Sock'em Fast and the Furious ripoff it released in 2008 or 9 if it didn't wind up in Ryan Gosling and Refn's hands.
and like, are you guys aware of like not to get off on the too much of a drive, like tangent, but like, are you guys aware that like when the movie premiered, like the producers were like they wanted him to like take the music out. They were like, this is horrible. They didn't want to release the movie. Like, and he was like, dug his heels down and was like, no, fuck that. Like, this is the version. And like, literally, it just happened that like he he took the risk and like basically forced them to put the movie out the way it was, and it was a hit. But like, they totally weren't on board with it, and they totally thought it was a piece of shit. and they totally were like, we need to like recut this, reshoot it. We need to change all this goofy ass music. Why is this? You know what I mean? They were really against it, which is funny given how popular Drive is and how much of a critical praise it had once it actually came out. And like, I think didn't it get like some people booed? I think at Cannes or some shit like that. Which I mean, it's not really
Ah.
meaningful.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I think that was
remember.
only got no. That was only God forgives. That
Only
got
God
booed.
Yeah, yeah,
That,
I
that
yeah.
was
definitely
I
got booze. That definitely
I
people were like, "What the fuck is this shit?"
dude, I was at that screening in Cannes. It was at 6 in the morning, and I fell asleep throughout 90% of the movie, and I woke up to everyone booing. Like the whole place was just booing the end of the movie, and I
That
was like, "What the fuck?
rules.
What just happened?" I
I
just
love that.
like I slept through the whole thing because it was so early. But yeah, that I remember that yeah, I was excited to see it because of the drive, and then I fell
Everybody
asleep.
was excited. Everybody was like, okay. Yeah, and you know, the word got out. It was like, if you want another drive, this is not it. Keep your expectations tempered. And even me, you know, I remember it came out on back in the days of on demand, where you would rent movies. It was the more sophisticated version of pay-per-view. You pay $2.99 and you would essentially download the movie on your cable box. It came out the same day as theaters in the United States. And I was like, I'm so hyped for this. Let's set the day aside. I'll make some popcorn. I'll make myself a mojito, and I'm gonna watch this movie. And I was disappointed by it the first time I watched it, even with that in mind that okay, this is not going to be the same thing as Drive. But my opinion on that has changed dramatically in the years since. I rewatched it probably for like the sixth or seventh time a year ago, and I'm like, oh, this movie's fantastic. I love this movie. This
it
movie's
it
Yeah.
so
it
enjoyable.
really it really makes you do a 180 because I
Mhm.
fucking was like, "What is this? This is
Yeah.
bullshit." Like, right? And now
It's a
I'm like,
grower.
"You're
It's a
right,
grower,
right."
not a shower. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
grower, not a shower. Like fucking Tony Mads in Pusher 2 when he came to
Yeah.
Mhm.
get it up, you know.
The main guy, not the main guy, but the antagonist of that movie, I
Mm.
was having conversations with that guy's agent like a year and a half ago when we were shooting Omega Fish Corp because I wanted to cast him for a certain role. And the his agent or somebody, maybe it was his manager, was like, "Yeah, he'll take the role and he'll do it for a discounted thing if you can do this because then he can get citizenship or a V." I honestly don't even remember most
Oh
of the
wow.
conversation, but they were
You
trying to
talking about the
grease
guy
the
who plays
wheels.
his father?
In Only God Forgives, the Asian actor
Oh
who
yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah. Okay,
cop.
yeah, okay, yeah, okay, okay. I thought you meant the guy from Pusher 2. I'm like, he's still alive, like the
Oh
dad,
no.
the Matt's dad. I'm like, that dude,
Oh
that funny
man, the
ass
dye
dude.
job on his hair is
Oh
painful
yeah,
to
his
look at.
fucking. I don't even know. It's got to be a toupee. Like that's not even his. It can't be his real hair. That shit looks like
It's
they just
very
slapped
Beetleborgs
that shit off of
Dracula.
him. Like
Yeah, Han.
Imagine how pissed I'd be if you had the power to help someone get American citizenship, and I'm over here like, what the fuck? Like, how, I've known you for 10 years. You could have done that for how long ago? What the fuck? Yeah.
Oh, it's not up to me. I know there was some things to play. It was far out of my hands. Okay, this guy didn't know who he was talking to, really. But yeah, no. To go back to something you were talking about, Hans, with like just the general vibe of Pusher. I think shooting. I believe it was shot on 16 millimeter in Copenhagen in the mid 90s. It is such a vibe, and it's so different from Refn's other movies where the characters are pretty chatty. The camera work is a bit sloppy. They're doing like this pan back and forth between Frank and then one of the characters who he is trying to claim some money from, who is a famous actor. I saw him pop up, I believe, in another round, and he was a hell of a lot older. But we didn't even really boil down the plot. Not that there is much plot, but now almost an hour into the podcast, Frank is set up by a former friend of his who he knew in prison vaguely, not even really a friend, just kind of an acquaintance, and Tony. And he winds up losing what amounts to, I believe, about like $2,000 of heroin. It's not a lot of money. In this setup, in this sting operation, he evades the police who are undercover, who are chasing after him, and runs into like a fountain
Yeah.
and opens the bag. So he's cleared, but now he's still in debt to the guy who gave him the heroin, which is Milo.
Milo. Yeah. Yeah.
And what we wind up getting for the second act of the movie is Frank starts making the rounds to people who owe him money. And Milo's enforcer, this man, Radovan, who aspires to be a chef and will eventually open a restaurant or something, right? Is helping him do so at first. And you get the sense like, okay, he actually seems to like him, but maybe not. Maybe he's done this 100 times. You know, oh, you're my buddy. I don't know what we're gonna do here. You know, he's probably very used to this situation occurring. And we come across one actor in particular who's got like such a ratty face, a wormy just appearance and vibe, and they're gonna try and coax him into robbing a bank so he can get the money. And
It's a
we
guy that
have
owes
like
him 30 whatever kroners or whatever their fucking Danish Copenhagen money is. He owes him 30,000,
mhm.
right? And like he tells Milo, like, because he lost the drugs, right? And because he already owes Milo. We figured that out too when he comes and first ask him for the drugs. He's like, but you already owe me 30,000. And he's like, well, I come on, man. Give it to me. I'll get you or whatever. And he promises to get it back to him or whatever. And obviously that falls through. So his debt increases, but they come to an agreement like, hey, you can get me some of this money today. And he's like, well, I know somebody who owes me money. He owes me 30. Let's go get it. So he takes Radovan with him because he's the fucking muscle. But yeah, go ahead, LowRes.
Well, we have a moment that echoes Pulp Fiction the year before where the gun goes off and blows apart this guy's head and just creates a mess. And Radovan's just like, well, tough luck. Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow. See you later.
I'll tell
But
Milo about it.
yeah, yeah. The whole relationship there is so interesting. And it runs similar to a lot of relationships that I knew like drug dealers 10 years ago would have with certain people. You know, it feels very like, yeah, we're friends, but we won't be friends if this gets pushed a little too far. It's like,
Jay.
yeah, I'm not going to let this interfere with having a good time tonight, but actually you owe me some money.
Jay,
And I didn't forget.
Jay,
So
Jay, 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
All right. Just want to make sure 10 years ago, guys.
Yeah.
10 years ago. Statute of limitations, people.
Back just a while back. It was last Tuesday. Yeah, no. So we eventually escalate into what winds up being an increasingly dodgy situation where Radovan is now bringing along a buddy who's a younger guy and way too eager to be inflicting some violence onto Frank or really anybody. He's very excited about the prospect of this. And eventually they bring Frank back to Milo's place, and it's just like, all right, what do you got? You got a watch? You got a chain? How about your car? All right. And he's starting to clear up most of the debt that way, but it's not all of it. And he says he's got a sum back at a hotel, and then no one's going to be there, but he can't collect it. And then there's no one at the desk. And oh no, we have this situation where they're going to remove one of his fingers. And then he yanks out a gun and shoots the little Eddie Haskell character for Radovan, books it out of there. And you kind of feel like, okay, well, now it's very simple. The writing's on the wall. You just got to leave. You just got to get the hell out of there. And so he has this prostitute love interest that he's been seeing for a while. She kind of likes him, maybe more than he likes her, but they got something going on. And the plan is to escape. Of course, Milo calls him up. He's saying, oh, things are getting too hot. And just come by, give me whatever it is you got. We'll settle the score that way. And we do a cutaway to like a Dexter kill room being prepared for Frank.
Yeah.
And he makes a deal at some rave, some Copenhagen rave in the mid 90s. It is such a vibe. It's so good. I love all the shots here of him navigating this warehouse. And when she finds out, oh, plan to go to Spain, that's done. Who cares about that? I can go back to living my life. She steals his money, takes off, and inadvertently winds up saving his character's life.
Yeah, yeah. She saves his life because they were straight up about to
Yeah, they were going
about to cut him
executed.
up and put him in the shawarma, like, for sure. Like which is a great way to end the movie. And I forgot that was how it ended. I remember like Frank not going back, but I forgot that the motivation was because he was dumb enough to believe Milo on the phone, which everything when he's on the phone, I'm like, you dumb motherfucker. Like he's not about to let you back. And then like it immediately shows like him Radovan comparing to like the kill room, right? And it's
Mm.
like where is like Frank's like instincts? Like how did Frank survive as long as he did? Because like everything, like even when Milo says over the phone, he says, a lot of people are talking about us, Frank. This is not good. We need to make this right. We need to stop this. And I'm like, yeah, he's gonna kill you, dog. Like, don't you like don't you get like but he that kind of shows you that Milo really thinks Frank is a dumbass for real. Cause Frank is kind of a dumbass because he low key wants this to be true. Like he
Yeah.
wants this to be true. So he's like, we're all right, we're going back. So he tells his girl, his hooker with a heart of gold, quite literally, like, hey, yeah, forget this. Fuck the plan to go to Amsterdam or wherever. Like we're going back. Everything is cool now. And I think she shows that she's a lot smarter than him because she's like, what? There's no way. And she takes the money and like runs. And I do kind of think that like on some level, like that was her saving his life intentionally too. Like I don't think it was just like her being uh upset because she wants them to be a thing, an actual couple, and run off together, which I definitely think she does.
Mhm.
But I also kind of think that like she's aware, like that she does actually care about Frank, and she knows if Frank goes back, he's dead. And yeah, and I like how in the other Pusher films they continuously mention Frank. Like in the first time you see Milo, and he's talking with Tony, Matt Mickelson, he's like, "Hey, have you seen your friend Frank?" Like
Yeah.
even after the fact that like Frank beat the shit out of him, almost killed him with a bat, and he's out of prison. And of course, what is Matt Mickles going to say? Yeah, we hung out, we still chill, we still cool. I love that moment. I just like that like there's a contained universe within the Pusher world. That if you watch the Pusher films, you get it. Like you get these characters still exist. This is a whole self-contained thing, and it's not in that like goofy Marvel universe kind of way that like we're
Mhm.
used to now, like post the Marvel era. Like, thank God we're coming out of that bullshit. But like that,
It doesn't feel strenuous when they're making
right,
these connections at all. It
right,
feels authentic to the characters. And just to go back to Frank's idiocy, he's it's established when the cops bring him in for questioning that he spent some time in prison. And so you would think, okay, well, this character would have some street smarts and he would know better. But actually, no, I don't think he would know better because he immediately goes back into that life. And then you get glimpses of his just like dumb nature at times. Like, for example, when he meets up with one of his contacts and he's got the prostitute with him, he's like, all right, listen, I've got a bag of heroin here that I can give you. And then it turns out to be like baking soda and lactate, and
yeah,
he's just got this dumb look on his face, and fucking Radovan's not tolerating it, and it's just like immediate dropping of friendship right there.
Mhm.
It's just like this guy's never going to learn. Although I guess if we're to glean something from the sequel to Pusher, all right, well, he's still alive, he's still out there, he did get away at the end of that, unless it's just, and it could actually just be Milo fucking around because he's such a dark, sinister character who plays dopey when he's not dopey at all. He relies on his Serbian accent and like slow speech and just sounding like Eeyore. But he's way, he's a smart guy playing dumb. Whereas
Right.
I think, Frank, you would expect more of him, but he's actually not all there.
Yeah, and I think the Milo character, one of the reasons that I like the Milo character so much is what you're talking about, is you know that he's a lot smarter than he portrays himself to be. Like, and you see it like at moments. It's like that subtle like kind of like switch where you watch him go from like, I'm everyone's friend, you're my friend, I'm trying to help you, you're my friend, to like, I will fucking kill you. Like you know
Mm.
what I mean? Like, and he has the minions to do it as well. Like I like, that's probably why I enjoy the third Pusher a lot, is because I was interested in him in one and two, and then we get to kind of see a little bit more of that, and we get to see him with his daughter, and you get to see him try to like be clean, and it literally starts with him in an what is it, an AA meeting and shit, and you just know like this guy's not gonna, he's gonna get high before this movie ends, and he definitely does, and he definitely and we also get the payoff of the kill room shit when Radovan comes back. We actually get to see that. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to talk about Pusher and not talk about all the Pushers, um, because I feel like they're of one whole piece.
They definitely are. You know, I was thinking about that when I was watching this movie, and I caught a reference to something that would come back around in Pusher 2. It's kind of doing the thing that is so overused these days whenever they do the 20-year later sequel or reboot or whatever it is. Something in Beetlejuice might have been referenced casually in 1988 and then comes back around and is a central plot point in the sequel years later, like the wife character. But I was thinking with the Mads Mikkelsen character in this movie, he's talking about, oh, yeah, I need two girls to suck my dick. And he's like talking up a big game. And then you catch him in Pusher 2 and he's with two girls and he can't even get hard. He's got fucking limp dick. So little things like that. I thought, oh, I see what just happened here is he went back to his movie, he drilled it, and then thought, let me just sprinkle a little bit of that into these sequels here.
And then you kind of see too, there's a moment where Frank and Tony are in the car and they're talking about, they're having like the fucking, I don't know if you want to call it the Tarantino kind of criminal talking about stupid random things, and they're having a conversation about that where they're saying like he's talking about getting his dick sucked or whatever, and he says this thing about like he tells Frank that he got his dick sucked and then he spermed. These are the words.
He spermed, yeah.
On the girl's face.
The translation there in the subtitle.
And then she said she wanted him to piss it off, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, and I pissed it off. And Frank's like, what? And then he's like, okay, who is this girl? Like, you're bullshit. And he's like, your mom. And then like it's just like a cold stop. And like Frank's like looking at him like, I'll fucking kill you. Like, it's not funny. And he's like, I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
I noticed that exchange was a little messy too, in that like it felt like one take or something that they did, because he fucks up the line at first. He's like, oh yeah, I pissed on a girl's face and I had to sperm it off, and then he corrects himself.
Yeah, he corrects it. He says,
and that's just in the movie. I was like, oh. It feels very of the time. It's kind of funny. 1996, we get two massive European heroin movies that end the exact same way, with somebody stealing money from the other character that matters in the film to get away and leave the country. This and Trainspotting.
I think that I don't know. Trainspotting is definitely one of those movies that it has its strong following, right? It's definitely one of those movies that like people look to and they're like, this is like the movie of its time. For me, I kind of like, I get that, and I feel like Trainspotting is a lot more, I don't know, there's something about Trainspotting that feels a little bit more like this is a serious movie. And I feel like Pusher doesn't have that, and I like that Pusher doesn't have that more. You know what I mean? Like
Pusher feels more homemade for certain.
Yeah, like Pusher feels like like it's something that like has more of a connection to the street in the dirty, scummy Copenhagen underbelly. Trainspotting, maybe it's just because I'm aware it's based on an Irvine Welsh novel, and you got this British director Danny Boyle, and you got fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi, like you got you got all these fucking people that like I don't associate with, like I feel like it's more of a production, like it's more of a film, like you know, and Refn's movie feels like, oh, like he just knew some criminals and like they just got together on the weekend and made this fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like it has that like charm to it that I like prefer in a way that Trainspotting just doesn't have, because Trainspotting is like a movie with a budget and it, you know, and real kind of like gravitas, like this is a important movie, you know what I mean? Like Pusher didn't get that level of notoriety, I feel like, internationally, like Trainspotting, you know, like Trainspotting's a movie that kind of crossed over. I don't think Pusher ever crossed over.
No, I think it showed up in a video store here or there, and was probably released by like Artisan or some company that was popular on video at the time, but it never made it a real impact. It never made a splash. You'd be hard pressed to find any reviews from American critics around the time it was released. I actually went
It's
to yeah,
it's a subtitles thing, right? It's a
maybe, but
foreign
in
movie.
the 90s there were definitely movies with subtitles that were like you got to go see that movie. You have to see that movie. And Pusher just wasn't one of them
Yeah.
that came over and did that. It wasn't until probably the aughts when the internet became more focal that people got wind of it and it had a second life. I guess maybe around the time the sequels came out.
I feel like in the 90s, I remember it being very like it had to hit in a big way for it to be a subtitle wide release.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
because it was like most movies were not going to be a wide release if they were subtitled. Like unless it was just a monster. Like you know what I mean? Like one of those movies that was like, "Oh, you guys got to watch it" because I remember in the 90s like subtitle just I guess some people are like this even now, but I feel like it's gone away. I feel like it's not as bad as it used to be, but subtitles were viewed as like a negative thing to the general audience. Like there was just like no fucking way that people could be like they would say like I'm not going to the movie theater to read. Like that makes no
Yeah.
sense. I don't want to fucking read. You know what I mean? Like, and I
Yeah.
feel like
The
now that's not really a thing. Like,
No, it's definitely not. I mean, off the top of my head, in the 90s, the movies with subtitles that actually had popularity in America, Life is Beautiful, but I believe there's a dubbed version that most people were
Yeah.
exposed to.
Yeah.
Run Lola Run, and
Amelie
probably like Wong Kar Wai films.
wasn't Amelie subtitled?
Yeah. That would be
Yeah.
another one
Yeah,
too,
Amelie was, but I feel like Amelie was one of those that like it got more popular in video like rental
for
places
sure.
because it definitely was a limited release movie at first. That was definitely not like Amelie was in a million screens, but it did come out. I remember it being at the theater. See, the thing about it is I have a weird relationship with movies because I literally grew up in a movie theater. Like my father like owned a cleaning company that cleaned movie theaters, and like I would help him when I wasn't in school. So I got to see all the movies for free, like in the like any movie because like they screen the print before the weekend it would come out. They'd usually get it
Right.
like a few days early. So like they would just you would come in and if you wanted to watch it early, you could watch it early. Or I could just come into the theater at any time and watch it because they knew who I was. They'd be like, okay, go in, Ryan, and shit. So I remember like a lot of those movies during that time. Like I remember them being in the theater and I remember like watching some of them and like movies like that like I remember it being around but I just remember it being one of those movies that like only certain kinds of people went to go see those movies. Like I vividly remember that as a kid like oh like these are more like movies for like older people who are more into more art adjacent shit like you know what I mean because like and then like you had a movie like Big Mama's House that like like everyone was going to see and I mean I guess that's a criticism of where I grew up and a critique of like the fucking audiences but I do feel like I remember vividly how different um the movie going audience was.
I
Like I
wish it would
feel
go back to that personally. I can't palate these letterbox users. I mean, you cut to 2025
Mhm.
and the local AMC is doing an IMAX screening of Parasite to celebrate 6 years or something. I don't know what the fuck they're
What?
celebrating. Yeah, I think it's just because Mickey 17 comes out in a couple of weeks.
And
I don't know why.
I do think that the theaters as exhibitors they're like trying any gimmick possible to keep people coming to the movies because it's such a like viewed as a old like a relic almost of the past like going to the movie theater is no longer what it used to be. So you got a lot of repertory showings of movies now. Like they did they just put out Nolan's space movie again,
Interstellar, yeah, they
Interstellar. I'm like,
put it
Oh
out
yeah.
for what was it? It's been 10 years or
it's
something
been
like
10 years,
that.
which is weird. I didn't it doesn't feel like it's been 10 years. But then like I noticed like in LA, they've got the big giant interstellar like you remember this the what is it? The not the cylinders, the fucking rectangular, like
Yeah,
there's that
the
scene with the
ships thing.
the
Yeah,
rectangle, like they
yeah,
had
yeah.
a fucking billboard that had three rectangles that would like swing. Have you seen that shit? You could probably look it up, Hans. It's like look up the
Sure.
Interstellar billboard. They only do that shit in LA. I've never seen billboards like that anywhere else in the country, like
Mm.
especially for a movie that's 10 years old. But I feel them. I feel like the movie business is doing all sorts of things to try to like make going to the movies or to get people to like, hey, this is a reason to go. Like there it is right there.
Ah,
Netflix,
yeah.
obviously. Netflix did it because Netflix is showing it too. But see, yeah, that's what I mean. That kind of shit. Like it's very gimmicky. It's very I feel like they're just trying whatever.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? They're just like, how do we get people interested? How do we get people to notice movies? And how do we get people to show back up at the movie theater?
Well,
I
the way
might.
they
It
make,
works on me for sure. I might be going to see
yeah.
Cowboy Bebop the movie in a couple of days in theaters, and actually the Japan Society of New York, which I kind of want to buy my way into and then take over from the inside. I'm really thinking about that. Is doing a Nabiko Obayashi retrospective where they've got a couple of 35 millimeter prints of his movies that they're going to be showcasing. So it's. I mean, I think maybe if you're, especially if you're in New York and LA, it's such a great place to catch older films, but I am starting to see that trickle out into places like Boston and other
It's like that
cities.
where I'm at. It's definitely like
Mhm.
that where I'm at. But maybe that's because I live in like I basically it's a college town. Like I live
Yeah.
by Ohio State University. But like the amount of repertory screenings, special screenings, it's a lot. There's a lot of shit that I get to see over here a lot. I'm kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised because having lived in LA and lived in and went to the like places like the New Beverly, uh it's not that fucking different in the Midwest, at least in certain cities. Like here, there's not much I don't see that I can't, that's playing in LA and New York, like by virtue of just the fact that there's multiple like theaters here that are sort of catering to that same kind of base, like just over here. Like yeah, there's like I'm trying to think of movies that have come out recently that I couldn't see. And no, it's pretty much the same level of like limited screenings. If it's a limited screening or something, I know the Gateway will have it for sure. Like
Well,
behind.
there's also the thing about how there's maybe five movies that are made for theaters anymore. Like I feel like when all of these theaters started popping up, all of these multiplexes and everything, like
Mhm.
you would get at least one big movie a month where people will go see, and I guess that will be profitable. But how many movies do they make for theaters anymore? You get like one or two event movies maybe, or a couple of blockbusters. Maybe you get a couple of superhero movies that are not great now. So even that people are not going to see anymore. I like when they do shit like this. There's a theater in London called Prince Charles Cinema.
Prince
They
Charles, yeah,
do,
yeah.
yeah, that
Mhm.
is actually about to close if people don't save it because I guess they're not making enough money with it. But that's the place that I would go to when I was in film school because they would just show old shit or just do like interactive like sing along musicals and things like that that I
Rocky Horror
don't.
Picture Show showings.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
they
Mhm.
did one. They did one for like the South Park movie
Mhm.
where or they would do events like I had a for the movie Your Next. Like they gifted you like a mask of like the killer mask, so you have
Mhm.
like cool shit like that to bring. Oh, Edgar Wright would sometimes show his movies, and I went to a screening of Spaced where he just showed back to back every episode. So shit like that I love.
Mhm.
I actually like going to those things more than going to the theater to see a new movie because I know that I'll probably
Yeah.
be disappointed with that. So I like the fact that they're doing shit like that. I'm sure it's out of desperation, but they showed Interstellar here in our multiplexes that I was surprised by. I wanted to go see it because I didn't get to see it in the theater when it first came out. But I like they're doing that just because I'm so not interested in anything recent that, if I'm gonna go see something like Interstellar that I know was made in a time where big movies, were still cared for by the people that were making them, then I'd
Yeah.
rather go see that than fucking Baby Girl.
And people do
Hans.
show up. People do show up to these screenings because, like, recently they did the Groundhog Day screening for the anniversary, and it was, and it was Groundhog Day, and I think they showed the movie like for 12 hours or some stupid, like over and over and over again. It was like six shows, and they did it at like multiple theaters. There's another theater up. up the street from me called the Studio 35 that I go to, and they did it there and they did it at Gateway, and people are showing up like and watching that movie 6 times. Like you know what I mean? It's not like so there's these people do show up if you make it an event. Like if you make it an event, like they will fucking show up. So that like I get it. Like I think whatever keeps the sort of theater experience alive, I'm definitely for it. Um, I don't think it's going away ever. I just don't believe that it's the dominant form of entertainment the way it used to be. And that's just the way it is. But I don't necessarily think it's like completely gone the way of the dinosaur. But I definitely do not believe that people, and when I say people, probably I'm mostly talking about industry people. I don't think that their expectations that we're going to have a return to like the 90s or like the
No.
80s or I just think that's unrealistic. Like you know what I mean? Like that's
Mhm.
not whatever movies look like in the next decade, like it's not going to look like that. You know what I mean? And I
Well,
definitely believe it.
technology.
Right. I
I
definitely
think.
believe
I
it'll still
think.
be around though.
I think technology either like fixed slash ruined movie theaters. I think because now, like, look at that wall behind you, Ryan.
Right.
Like, I'm sure
I
those are
mean, look,
movies,
I
right?
got a screen right here. Like I watch movies
Yeah,
all the time. I project movies and
right.
fucking, you
and
know.
and and now it's so much cheaper than ever
Right.
to just get a gigantic TV or even like a projector that's 4K for like $100, like
Right.
those tiny Chinese ones. Like you don't even have to go fancy with like a $1,000 one or anything. So now, if you don't want to go through the experience of oh, well, maybe the studio is not that clean, or maybe someone brought their fucking kid and it's crying, or there's a couple that's just talking or just being annoying there. I'll just sit back in my underwear and do whatever the fuck I want at home, play it on my wall if I want, and you don't have to put up with I mean, with spending what fucking $50 to go see them. That's another thing
Mhm.
too, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's so expensive up there.
Expensive as hell.
S-
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that and how cheap technology is now that it either fixed the going to the movies the problem when people don't even go anymore, or ruined them because you can just do that from home now.
Did I see right that you went to go see Presence in theaters?
Me or
Presents.
Hans?
Hans, did the new Soderbergh haunted house movie?
Oh no, I downloaded that. Ugh,
Did you watch a
God.
cam copy? I've been looking
Yes.
for that
Yeah,
since it
yeah,
came out. I
yeah.
was like, Hans doesn't go to the movies.
No,
I almost went to see Presence a
no.
couple times, and I was like, yeah. I just was like, you know what? I got other stuff I can watch.
It's
I,
Mhm.
exactly what you think it is.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
is the gimmick is there, and it's actors being like, oh,
It's
wow,
Soderbergh, and
wow, it's weird.
I'm always willing to give Soderbergh a shot because I feel like he's one of the filmmakers who's always trying shit. You know, like I kind of give him like I'm willing to take a chance on a Soderbergh movie because I'm like,
Yeah,
this guy is always like just trying shit. He's like never, he's like a very active director too. He doesn't like do the Tarantino thing where it's like,
taking
I'm
five
going to only
years.
make 10 movies and like now I'm not
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
make my movie. And it's like, stop being so precious, you fucking nerd.
This
Like, you
is
know, like,
this is such a gimmicky thing though that depends so much on oh my God, the ghost is the ghost in the room with us type of shit where it's
right.
just like okay, fucking like half an hour in I was like, ah, fuck this already.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's like
I've noticed like, it's hard for a lot of us, and I say us and just the general us, like people who are used to movies being probably like the center of the conversation for so long at a certain part of our life. Like as we move out of that, and I think we're pretty far removed from it at this point. Like, right? Like they're not really the center no more. It's been not the center for a while now. I feel like there is a lot of pushback from filmmakers and movie watchers like about like the modern era, like in the times that we live in, and what a movie's supposed to be, what a movie's supposed to be about. You know, like Robert Eggers is, I'm never gonna make a movie that's modern. You know what I mean? Like
I
that
hate
kind of
that.
shit, which is
Yeah.
like, so I just am like, bro, like as a filmmaker, and I know I can say this to you guys because you guys make movies, like you have to deal with the times that you're alive, right? Like And like, I get it. Everything about being alive in 2025 is counter to sort of what we've come to know about movies, if that makes sense. Where it's like everything about living in 2025 with smartphones and the ubiquitous nature of like online culture and the way people interact with screens, all of that shit is we're constantly like inundated with day in and day out. And I think I see a lot of resistance to people trying to grapple with that in film, and not only in the stories, but in the methods by which those stories are told.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, so
It's cowardly. It's uncreative.
it is. It literally is. It's like, dude, like, like there's so many weird, interesting like things to say
Yeah,
potentially
I
about the
agree.
world.
I think this era, and not just this era, but really after 2000 is ripe, for being processed and figured out and molded into something on the screen. And they're so averse to it because they just don't. I guess they don't have like it would be a mentally strenuous act, I think, to figure out how to lay that out in a movie in a way that's not too obvious. And have you seen Rachel Ormont yet,
Still haven't seen
Ryan?
it yet. Not yet. No.
Okay. It hasn't leaked yet. Not like actors
Not like
got
actors
out.
did. Yeah, yeah.
No. Well, I went to go see Rachel Ormont. I think what Peter does with that movie is interesting, but it gets a little frustrating at times because of that exact reason you said of, okay, we're inundated with the smartphones and the technology. And I think there's probably interesting observations to be made about that type of thing. But if you look outside of that, that's low hanging fruit. There's so much more that's going on that, yeah, this plays a part in all these other things. But I don't know. I think if a filmmaker wanted to sit down and figure out how to process the modern era, it could be something really fascinating. And maybe the closest thing I've seen to that with like a big budget has been Vox Lux, the Brady Corbet's before Natalie Portman shows up in that movie. Anyway, then she shows up and it's like, all right, this isn't as good. Now she's doing Honora's horrible East Coast accent.
She's talking like Harley Quinn and shit.
Yeah, and everything before that is kind of cool and interesting, and it's early odds, and then 9/11 plays a part. Like 9/11 as a subject, I think could also be ripe for the taking as a movie topic of just in some fashion, and yet nobody really knows how to even approach it. So no, I think yeah.
Do you think it's just him being a fucking coward dork that doesn't want people to call him out on him being inaccurate? Because I feel like all
Hold
of
on,
his
you're so
old-
out of focus right now. I thought I was looking at scenes from Pusher for a minute.
Because I feel like all of his movies, yeah, fine, they're set back in, no one's gonna be like, well, the witches didn't dress like this.
Robert
but
Eggers, you're talking about.
yeah. Like no one, well, I mean, people are making a big deal, but oh, Nosferatu had a mustache. That's not the Nosferatu. You know what I mean? So like, he's probably afraid of like doing a movie.
I
in the
think he's just
MySpace
he's
time.
been sucking his own dick as
Yeah.
having the reputation for being a historian and it's going to be accurate to the time. Then
He's
that's
one
why
of
he looks
those
like Vlad the
guys-
Impaler.
He's one of those guys who's into like folk culture and like he goes to Renaissance fairs, like, you know what I mean, like those kind of guys. Like he would dress up like a fucking medieval fucking peasant.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
Love in the Spectrum date.
Yeah, like he's one of those type of guys, and it's like, all right, whatever, to each their own. But like he's so pretentious, and he like moved to London because I know he did it because Kubrick did it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, this dude doesn't have original bone in his body. Like, I just think that. Like, I just do. Like, when I look at Eggers, I'm just like, and you can't really.
I don't understand. Wait, why would you move to London for what? To get culture there? To get
because
inspired?
Kubrick I'm telling you, the
Mhm.
reason he moved out of the United States and he lives in England now is because Kubrick did it. I'm telling
I
you,
would
that's the reason.
understand.
People not admit that if you tell them, no, of course I wouldn't. Fuck you. Yes, you did.
Like, I get it if you're moving to like what's the comic book ogre guy that did Watchmen? What's his fucking name? The comic
Alan
book,
Moore.
Alan Moore, who
Ogre?
lives in like a
Comic book ogre.
yeah, who lives in like in a house in the middle of nowhere. Like his house is a mess, and he's just like, well, I'm real art. Like I understand he was doing shit like that. tell me that you're moving to fucking London for inspiration. Fuck you. That's like saying, "Oh, I'm gonna move to New York because I need to be inspired." It's like it's a big city. What do you get? You're rich in a big city. What inspiration are you getting from there? You're not getting any. Ugh. I like. I've stayed away from knowing anything about him just because I don't want like I enjoyed his movies. I don't want his personality to ruin his movies for me because that's happened with so many directors. But everything I hear from like him, it's just like the type of dork that he was
Oh
growing
yeah.
and like how he was bullied and now it's like well now I'm more interesting than I actually like that type of I'm only into like I'm really into Bukowski when I'm 13 because he says fuck and he says tits and it's just like that type of dork. Um, but I don't like the whole modern like we can't do anything with modern technology or whatever. Motherfucker, don't you live with modern technology every day?
Right, right.
Your life just based on your phone? Like, are you not able to live your life and have experiences because there's always a phone there ruining everything?
And
Like,
you know
I
what
don't,
the
I don't
problem
understand
is?
that.
You really know what the problem is too with his approach is because like his movies are filled with like the presentism of like modern day kind of criticisms of social shit, right? And he's transposing it on like the fucking 1800s or 1700s or whatever, and it doesn't fit. Like, you know what I mean? It's like none of that shit existed back then, bro. Like they didn't have the social norms of today are not even nowhere near the social norms of when they were fucking burning women at the stake for having their period. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not the same, dog. Like and you see him doing that. Like you see him like trying to make this is a commentary on modern feminism. It's like, bro, just make a modern movie. If you're gonna do that, make
Yeah.
a fucking modern movie. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of trying to transpose today's norms or the sort of the whatever the trendy sort of like platitude about social justice awareness that's really most of these people have no beliefs anyway, so they're just like saying them and they put it in the movie and it just doesn't
Yeah.
work because they didn't think that way in that era. It feels fake as fuck, and then you go watch a movie from like 1970 or something, and even then it's like, okay, like if they were thinking this way in 1970, like what the fuck do you think they were doing in like pre-slavery era? Like, you know what I mean? Come on,
Yeah.
bro. Like, it doesn't track. It's like an erasure of history or some shit.
Mhm.
That's why
I don't
like
know. I was along for the ride when Lily Rose Depp said, "Are you slut shaming me?" and Nosferatu.
like, right, it's like, what the fuck is this supposed to be? Like, I don't whatever. It's fucking Eggman. He's got his listen,
Eggman.
he's got his writers. Like, you can't really say nothing about him because like there's a certain subsect of like sort of like, I don't know, mostly white, mostly like kind of like liberal
Dorky,
bourgeois,
nerdy,
kind of like
fucking into.
well-off people. They like love him, and like everything that he
Yeah.
does is like you. It's of course. How can you say Eggers is not the best ever? Like, what do you mean? Like, it's like
Yeah, folk horror is better because the water is not potable. Don't you know
like
that's so hard? There's no soap or sheets in the bed.
he's really a polarizing figure. Like, if you in movie talk, like because like I don't know, it's just something about him. Like, he's an avatar for like a lot of people. Like, you know what I mean? And like for everyone that he's not an avatar with, you're just like, okay, yeah, bro, we know, we see it. Like, why are you guys making the big deal about this?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
why is he being heralded like as it's like, yeah, okay, the witch, yeah, the lighthouse, okay, yeah, like
But it's also like okay, so you enjoy his movies. Can we keep it at that? Do
no,
we have to elevate this
no, it's got to
thinker
be
now
everything.
because he made a movie where Robert Pattinson threw up and
Yeah,
it's black and white, so now he's a
and he
brilliant.
farted
It's
and
just
he jerked off to a
he's
mermaid.
yeah,
Yeah, all that
it's
shit. Like,
just
that's high art. You know,
you just need to stop fucking elevating these dorks into what they're not. I hate that shit. I
Mm.
and,
shout
I-
out
and
to
I hate
Robert
that shit.
Eggers, by the way.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I like his movies. Just don't make me hate them by showing who you are.
No,
Wow.
let's keep directors
Oh,
up.
Hans, no, Hans, you fucked up your microphone.
Fuck.
You're talking
Oh,
into a
fuck.
tin can now.
Shit.
Uh,
There we go.
yeah.
But shout out
All
to
that.
a Refn for making Pusher, by the way. That was
Yeah, I was gonna say all that to say you'll never encounter that problem with Refn. Refn, he's the real deal, the genuine article. We should do another one of these on Pusher 2 and 3 in a couple of weeks. I want to watch them properly in 4K and not spoil it for myself for the sake of the show.
Yeah.
I am going to go back because I think the movie looks fine. I guess
Mhm.
the transfer that I saw in archive looks fine, but the actual 4K, from what I've seen, the grabs of it looks terrific. Looks excellent. How did you guys watch it? And then we'll close out the show.
1080p copy.
Yeah,
YTS.
I have 3 copies of it on Plex, my Plex server. I watched all 3. I did notice it was on Tubi, but I didn't want to watch the commercials.
Mhm.
But I did, out of curiosity, click on the Tubi. I wanted to see how it was streaming, and I did notice that like the quality on Tubi was pretty good. I know it's not the 4K, but I was surprised. I thought it was going to be like, I think the quality on Tubi is better than the 1080p that I have. So yeah, I don't know what. Shout out to Tubi, the best streaming service.
It really is. It really is nowadays, especially. But Ryan, thank you so much for coming on to talk about Pusher. Do you want to just plug your
Oh,
podcast and
sure.
anything else you got going on? Hans, what would you
What was you
like
gonna
to
say?
say? What's so important?
I was just wanted to say that if you like this movie, you might be interested in our upcoming movie, Disorderly, that has a bit of a pusher feel to it.
Does it?
Just to spoil the little bit that I've seen, the
Laura's like,
10 seconds.
let me check the edit
The,
real
I
quick.
don't know. I was watching it last night. I don't know if it's a lot like Pusher.
the 10 seconds that I mean, there's a bald guy in it.
Okay.
Wow, you're right about that. Yeah, if you like bald men, stay tuned for Disorderly. I don't even know if that's what we're going to call it at the end of We'll see. We'll find out.
I feel like you guys are gonna end up changing it because I feel like people are gonna confuse it with the movie that the Fat Boys made,
Is that called, what was that?
Oh.
Disorderlies.
Oh, Disorderlies. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you guys are gonna end up changing that title.
I think so. I don't, the S. Craig Zoller thing of like, oh, you shouldn't do one word titles are forgettable. I don't know if I subscribe to that theory, but it's in my head when it comes to this anyway. And I'm like, I don't know. I got to come up with some other. I'll call it the Avenging Silence, coming soon to theaters, 2026.
Yeah, you know what's great about these titles that you pick? Trying to pronounce them in Spanish to people when I talk about movies that I'm in to people in Spanish because they're like, "Oh, what is your movie called?" And I'm like, Mass State Lottery," but you're not gonna get that because you don't speak English. So I have to like try to translate it to Massachusetts State Lottery, but then they're like, why that title? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't been able to explain this ever. But yeah, that's been my experience with
Well, the movie
talking.
ends with your character having a scratch ticket and
Yeah.
hitting the lottery, winning millions
Yeah.
of dollars. And it's a big happy ending where our characters
Yeah.
hug, jump up and
Yeah.
down. It's a
That was
good
my
time.
favorite. That was my favorite part. Yeah.
Boston Gardens in the background. Yeah, you see the little leprechaun from Boston, so you know we're there.
We haven't called it Boston Garden since 1985.
Okay, what is it called?
TD Bank Garden.
Oh,
The bank bought it. So anyway, Mutual Aberration Society. Go listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And what is your Patreon, Ryan?
I think it's / Mutual Aberration Society. I've been on a hiatus, but I have episodes banked, and eventually I will be back. I've just been very focused on outside creative stuff, but it will return. But until the meantime, there are episodes with both Hans and LowRes and other people and shit. So
hell yeah.
if you like to hear people bitch about movies and how much Robert Eggers sucks, then MAS is the place
Yes.
to be.
I think Ryan, I think you need, and maybe a separate podcast completely. I think you need a podcast with DC because you guys have such a good dynamic whenever you do your crossover shows. I
Yeah.
could listen to 100 of those. I listened to the Honora one that he put out with you right before we got back together and did our Clint Eastwood Juror #2 show. That was a fucking disappointment.
Yeah, shout out to Darius. Yeah, 8 Plates is definitely I definitely
Yeah.
think he
Shout out to him doing a movie we were supposed to cover next week
Yeah.
with Glenn Rockney for his show.
Yeah, you Jew.
Asshole.
Yeah, shout out
Yeah.
to 8 Plates. Definitely I think Darius is eventually gonna have to whether he does another podcast or not. I think like that name is so strange.
Oh
And-
yeah.
and has no
eight places. I remember the first
it
time
has
we
no
ever did it.
context.
Mhm.
And I say
Yeah.
that with love, but like I don't know. When I tell people about the podcast, I've told people before, like I'm listening to 8 Place. They always look at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I said somebody with a weird name for a podcast. I'm like, "That's a pretty weird name."
Yeah.
So yeah, Darius, maybe you should start another podcast.
I mean, if you have to put like the title of your podcast in parentheses 8 plates so people understand that it's not working. You gotta change it up. What would you
Well, it
call it,
used to
Hans?
it used to be like a schizo workout
Right.
thing, right?
It
Yeah.
evolved. It evolved,
Yeah.
which is why I think he should evolve into a like even if it just changes the name of the podcast totally, I think he should
Yeah.
probably do
I think
that.
it should be I think it should be called Movies in the Closet with Darius.
Take
Wow.
our suggestions, Darius.
Yeah. All right. Well, that has been movies for this week. Thank you for listening.